massive alien ship sat in Miller's junkyard like a sleeping giant. For 50 long years it had been there. 50 years of rain, snow, and sun beating down on its dark metal surface. Most people who saw it thought it was just expensive scrap metal. They were wrong. Very wrong. Jake Miller walked around the ship every morning with his coffee. His grandfather had owned this junkyard before him. His father too. Now it was Jake's turn to deal with the strange metal beast that took up half his property. The ship was huge, bigger than 3 football fields put together. It was black as midnight and covered in symbols that hurt your eyes if you looked too long. Another day, another dollar, Jake said to himself. He kicked a small stone toward the ship. The stone bounced off the metal with a weird sound, not like hitting normal metal, more like hitting something alive. Jake had grown up hearing stories about this ship. His grandfather found it crashed in the desert back in 1975. The government came first, men in black suits with fancy equipment. They poked and prodded the ship for months. Nothing happened. They couldn't even find a door. Then came the aliens. The first ones arrived in 1978. They were tall and blue with too many arms. They spoke perfect English and offered to buy the ship. Jake's grandfather said yes, but there was a problem. The blue aliens couldn't make the ship work either. After 6 months, they gave up and left. Next came the green ones in 1983. They had big heads and small bodies. Very smart, they said. Masters of technology, they claimed. They studied the ship for 2 years, built machines around it, shot it with lasers. Nothing. The ship stayed dead and silent. The red aliens tried in 1991. They were warriors, they said. Conquerors of 1,000 worlds. They brought weapons that could cut through any metal. The weapons broke. The ship didn't get a scratch. More aliens came over the years. Yellow ones, purple ones, some that looked like giant bugs, others that were just floating lights. All of them failed. All of them left angry and confused. Worthless piece of junk, the last group had said before leaving. That was 5 years ago. The government stopped caring. The aliens stopped coming. Everyone forgot about the ship except Jake. He was stuck with it. A giant paperweight that ate up space he could use for real junk that people actually wanted to buy. Jake finished his coffee and walked closer to the ship. Up close you could see how perfect it was. No rust, no dents. The metal looked brand new even after all these years. The symbols on the side seemed to move sometimes, but Jake figured that was just his eyes playing tricks. He reached out and touched the ship's surface. It was always warm. Summer or winter, the metal felt like it had been sitting in sunshine. Jake had touched it thousands of times before. Nothing ever happened. Today felt different though. As Jake's hand pressed against the warm metal, something changed. A soft humming sound came from inside the ship. Very quiet. So quiet he almost missed it. Jake pulled his hand away quickly. The humming stopped. "What the hell?" Jake whispered. He looked around the junkyard. Empty as always. No customers this early in the morning. No neighbors close enough to hear anything. Just Jake and the ship in the morning silence. Jake reached out again. This time he kept his hand on the metal longer. The humming came back. Stronger now. And there was something else. A feeling. Like the ship was thinking. "Impossible," Jake said out loud. "You're just a machine. A broken machine." But deep down, Jake knew something was wrong with that idea. Machines didn't stay perfect for 50 years. Machines didn't feel warm without power. And machines definitely didn't hum when you touched them. Jake pulled his hand away and stepped back. The ship went quiet again, silent as a grave. But now, Jake couldn't shake the feeling that something inside was watching him, waiting for something. But waiting for what? Over the years, the smartest aliens in the galaxy had tried to unlock this ship's secrets. They had failed. Government scientists with their best equipment had failed. Everyone who touched this ship had walked away with nothing. So why did Jake feel like the ship was finally ready to wake up? He stared at the massive black surface, and for just a moment Jake could swear he saw his reflection in the metal. But his reflection was smiling. Jake wasn't smiling at all. Something was about to change. Jake could feel it in his bones. The question was he ready for what came next? Part 2. The Awakening. Jake couldn't sleep that night. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard that soft humming sound. He kept thinking about the warm metal and the strange feeling that something was watching him. By morning, he had made up his mind. He was going back to the ship. The sun was just coming up when Jake walked into his junkyard. He had a toolbox in one hand and a flashlight in the other. If the ship wanted to play games, Jake would play along. He had been fixing broken things his whole life. Cars, trucks, old machines that nobody else wanted. Maybe this alien ship wasn't so different. "Okay, big guy," Jake said to the ship. "Let's see what you're really made of." Jake started at the bottom of the ship and worked his way around. He ran his hands along every inch of the surface. The metal stayed warm under his touch. Sometimes the humming came back. Other times the ship stayed silent. Jake began to notice a pattern. The humming was stronger in some places than others. After 2 hours of searching, Jake found something interesting. Near what looked like the front of the ship, there was a section where the metal felt different, smoother. When Jake pressed his palm against it, the humming became so loud he could feel it in his chest. "Found you," Jake whispered. He pushed harder against the smooth section. Nothing happened. He tried knocking on it like a door. Still nothing. Jake stepped back and scratched his head. This was the spot. He was sure of it. But how did it work? Jake thought about all the stories his grandfather had told him. Government scientists with their computers and laser scanners. Alien experts with technology beyond human understanding. They had all tried to force the ship open. They had used power and strength and intelligence. Maybe that was the problem. Jake sat down on an old tire and really looked at the ship. What if it wasn't broken? What if it was just sleeping? His old dog Rex used to sleep so deep that you had to whisper his name real soft to wake him up. Yelling never worked. Rex would just sleep harder. "Hey there," Jake said quietly to the ship. "I'm Jake Miller. My family has been taking care of you for a long time." The humming got a little louder. "I know you've been here for 50 years, Jake continued. "That must get pretty boring. Just sitting here day after day, nobody to talk to." Jake felt silly talking to a machine, but something told him to keep going. "I bet you miss flying around in space," Jake said. "Seeing stars and planets and all that cool stuff. Maybe you miss your friends too." A new sound came from the ship. Not humming this time, more like a sigh. A very deep, very sad sigh. Jake's heart started beating faster. Machines didn't sigh, only living things sighed. "Are you lonely?" Jake asked. The smooth section of metal began to glow. Soft blue light like moonlight on water. Jake stood up and walked closer. The glow got brighter as he approached. "It's okay," Jake said. "I'm not going to hurt you. I just want to understand." Jake placed both hands on the glowing section. The light spread out from under his palms like ripples in a pond. The humming became a song now, beautiful and strange, not like any music Jake had ever heard. Suddenly the glowing section started to move. It didn't open like a door. It dissolved like sugar in water. One moment it was solid metal. The next moment Jake was looking into a tunnel that led deep into the ship. Cool air flowed out of the opening. It smelled like rain and starlight. Jake peered into the tunnel. It was lit up with the same soft blue glow. The walls looked smooth as glass. "Well," Jake said to himself, "guess there's no turning back now." Jake grabbed his flashlight and stepped into the ship. The moment his feet touched the floor inside, the opening sealed shut behind him. Jake spun around, but there was nothing there. Just smooth wall. "Don't panic," Jake told himself. "You wanted in. Now you're in." The tunnel stretched ahead of him. The blue light got brighter as he walked deeper into the ship. His footsteps echoed strangely, like he was walking through a cathedral made of metal. After what felt like forever, Jake reached the end of the tunnel. It opened up into a huge room. The walls curved up into darkness above his head. In the center of the room was a chair. Not a normal chair. This one looked like it was grown instead of built. It pulsed with the same blue light as the walls, and sitting in the chair was something that made Jake's blood run cold. It looked human, almost. Jake's flashlight shook in his hand as he stared at the figure in the chair. It was definitely shaped like a human, but something was wrong. The skin looked too smooth, too perfect. Like it was made of the same metal as the ship, but somehow alive. The figure's eyes were closed. Its chest rose and fell slowly like it was sleeping, or maybe dying. Jake couldn't tell which. "Hello?" Jake whispered. The figure's eyes snapped open. They glowed with the same blue light as the walls. Jake jumped back and almost dropped his flashlight. "Finally," the figure said. Its voice sounded like wind through trees. "I was beginning to think you would never come." Jake's mouth went dry. You were waiting for me." The figure smiled. It was a sad smile. "Not you specifically, Jake Miller, but someone like you, someone who could hear the ship's song. How do you know my name? The ship knows everything that happens near it. Every conversation, every visitor, every failed attempt to wake us up." The figure slowly stood from the chair. It moved like water, smooth and graceful. I am Kale. I am the guardian of this vessel. Jake took a step back. Guardian? Are you human? Kyle laughed, but it wasn't a happy sound. I was human once, a long time ago, before I bonded with the ship, before I became something else. Bonded? This ship is not just a machine, Jake. It is alive. It thinks, it feels, it dreams. Kale walked closer, and Jake could see that his skin really was like metal, but warm and soft. And it has been sleeping for 50 years, waiting for the right person to wake it up. Jake's mind was spinning. Why me? Why not the government people? Or the aliens? They were all smarter than me. Smart. Kyle shook his head. They were clever with technology, yes. But they could not hear what the ship was really saying. They tried to force it awake with power and tools and threats. The ship does not respond to force. Then what does it respond to? Kale placed his hand on the wall. The blue light spread out from his touch, racing along the curved surface like lightning. Kindness, understanding, the willingness to listen instead of demand. Jake watched the light dance across the walls. It was beautiful, like being inside a living star. The ship has been calling for help, Kyle continued. Not with words, with feelings, with loneliness, with pain. Most beings cannot hear such calls, but humans. Kyle looked directly at Jake. Humans are different. Different how? You feel things others cannot. You care about broken things. You try to fix what is hurt instead of throwing it away. Kyle gestured around the glowing room. This ship has been hurt, Jake, badly hurt. It crashed here 50 years ago, running from something terrible. Running from what? Kyle's expression grew dark. The Devourers, ancient beings that consume life itself. They destroyed my world. They destroyed the ship's creators. This vessel is one of the last survivors of a war that lasted 1,000 years. Jake felt cold, despite the warm air. Are they still out there? Yes, and they are coming here. The words hit Jake like a punch to the stomach. To Earth, why? Because the ship is waking up. After 50 years of silence, it is finally singing again. The Devourers will hear that song. They will follow it here. Kale's glowing eyes met Jake's. Unless we stop them first. We? Jake's voice cracked. I'm just a junkyard owner. I fix old cars. I don't fight space monsters. You're more than you know, Jake Miller. Kyle walked back to the chair and placed his hands on its armrests. This ship has weapons that can destroy stars. It has shields that can protect entire planets. It has knowledge that could advance your species by 1,000 years. But it will only work for someone it trusts. Someone who woke it with kindness instead of force. Someone like you. Jake stared at the chair. It looked innocent enough, but he could feel power humming inside it. Dangerous power. What happens if I sit in that chair? You become bonded with the ship like I am. You gain access to all its abilities, all its knowledge, all its pain. Kyle's voice became very quiet, and you stop being completely human. Jake thought about his simple life. His small junkyard, his old truck, his morning coffee. All of it seemed very far away now. How long do we have? Jake asked. The Devourers will detect the ship's awakening within days. They travel fast, very fast. Kyle looked up at the ceiling. Jake, I need you to understand something. If you walk away now, if you leave this ship, the Devourers will come anyway. But they will find a sleeping ship and a dying guardian. Earth will fall without a fight. Jake closed his eyes. He thought about everyone he knew. His neighbors, his friends, people who had no idea that something from their nightmares was coming for them. When Jake opened his eyes, he was looking at the chair. Tell me what I need to do. Part 4. The Choice. Jake stared at the glowing chair for a long moment. His hands were shaking, but not from fear, from the weight of what he was about to do. Before I sit down, Jake said, tell me about the bonding. What exactly will happen to me? Kale moved closer, his metal-like skin reflecting the blue light. The ship will connect with your mind. Your thoughts will become its thoughts. Your feelings will become its feelings. You will know things that humans were never meant to know. And the bad parts. You will feel every pain the ship has ever felt. Every loss. Every moment of the 1,000-year war. Kale's voice grew heavy. You will carry the memories of entire worlds dying. Sometimes, Jake, you will forget which thoughts are yours and which belong to the ship. Jake nodded slowly. How long have you been bonded? 200 years. The number hit Jake like a brick. 200? But you look, the bonding stops aging. You become something between human and ship. Neither fully alive nor fully machine. Kyle sat on the edge of the chair's armrest. I had a wife once, children. They lived and died while I stayed the same. That is the price of this power. Jake felt his throat tighten. He thought about Sarah, the girl who worked at the diner in town. They had been talking about maybe going on a date. Now he might never age, never die, never be truly human again. Is there another way? Jake asked. Can we fight the Devourers without the bonding? Kyle shook his head. The ship's weapons are too complex for a normal human mind to control. The knowledge required would burn out your brain in seconds. The bonding protects you, changes you, makes you strong enough to handle the ship's power. Suddenly the walls around them flashed red. An alarm sound filled the air. Not loud, but urgent. What's happening? Jake shouted over the noise. Kyle's eyes went wide. They're here. The Devourers. They found us faster than I thought possible. Jake felt his stomach drop. How is that possible? You said we had days. The ship's awakening was stronger than I expected. The signal reached farther into space. Kyle jumped up and pressed his hands against the wall. Images appeared in the blue light. Jake saw space, stars, and something else. Something dark, moving between the stars like oil spreading through water. There, Kyle pointed at the darkness. 5 Devourer ships. They're already in your solar system. Jake watched in horror as the dark shapes moved toward Earth. They were huge, bigger than cities, and they ate light itself, leaving empty black holes in space where stars used to shine. How long until they reach Earth? Jake asked. 6 hours, maybe less. Jake's mind raced. 6 hours. In 6 hours, everything he had ever known would be gone. Unless he made the choice. Unless he gave up his humanity to save humanity. Kale, if I do this, if I bond with the ship, can we really stop them? Yes, this ship was built to fight Devourers. It has weapons that can tear holes in reality, shields that can protect entire star systems. But Jake, Kale grabbed his arm. Even with all that power, the fight will be terrible. Devourers are not just ships, they are living nightmares. They feed on fear and pain and death. Jake looked at the images on the wall again. The dark ships were getting closer. He could almost feel their hunger reaching across space. What about Earth's military? Can't they help? Keel made a bitter sound. Your planet's weapons are like throwing rocks at a hurricane. The Devourers have destroyed civilizations 1,000,000 years more advanced than Earth. Jake closed his eyes and thought about his life, his small junkyard, his old truck, his morning coffee, his plans to ask Sarah out. All of it seemed so simple now, so precious. When he opened his eyes, Jake was looking at the chair again. If I don't make it through this, Jake said. If the bonding kills me or the fight goes wrong, will you tell people what happened? Will you make sure they know someone tried? Jake, you don't have to do this. We could run. The ship is fast. We could escape to another galaxy. And leave Earth to die. Jake shook his head. No, I've spent my whole life fixing broken things. I'm not going to stop now. Jake walked to the chair and put his hands on the armrests. The metal was warm and alive under his touch. He could feel the ship's consciousness pressing against his mind like a gentle giant asking permission to enter. Will it hurt? Jake asked. Yes, Kale said honestly, but only at first. Then you will feel more powerful than you ever imagined possible. Jake took a deep breath. He thought about Sarah, about his neighbors, about every person on Earth who had no idea that monsters from space were coming to eat their world. Okay, ship, Jake whispered. Let's save the world. Jake sat down in the chair. The universe exploded inside his head. Pain, incredible burning pain flooded through Jake's mind. It felt like lightning was racing through his brain, rewriting everything he thought he knew. He screamed, but the sound was lost in the roar of 1,000 alien voices suddenly speaking inside his head. Then, as quickly as it started, the pain stopped. Jake opened his eyes. The world looked different now. He could see energy flowing through the walls. He could feel the ship's heartbeat like it was his own. And he could sense something else, something dark and hungry approaching Earth. Jake? Kale's voice sounded far away. Can you hear me? Jake turned to look at Kale and gasped. He could see right through him, not his body but his thoughts, his memories, his pain from 200 years of loneliness. "I can see everything," Jake whispered. His voice sounded different, deeper, like it was coming from the ship itself. "The bonding worked," Cal said, relief clear in his voice. "How do you feel?" Jake stood up from the chair. Power flowed through him like electricity. He could feel the ship's weapons charging, its engines spinning to life, its shields forming around them like a protective bubble. "I feel," Jake paused, searching for the right word, "complete, like I was always meant to be here." But even as he said it, Jake felt something slipping away. His memories of morning coffee seemed fuzzy. His face in the mirror this morning was hard to remember. The bonding was already changing him. "The Devourers?" Jake asked. 4 hours out," Kyle replied. "They've increased speed. They know we're awake now." Jake closed his eyes and reached out with his new senses. He could feel the dark ships moving through space like cancer spreading through a healthy body. 5 of them, each one the size of a mountain. Each one hungry for the life energy of 6 billion humans. "Not today," Jake said. Jake raised his hand and the ship responded. The entire vessel lifted off the ground for the first time in 50 years. Dirt and old car parts fell away as they rose into the sky. Jake felt the ship's joy at flying again. It had missed the stars. Through the ship's eyes, Jake could see his junkyard getting smaller below them, his old life literally falling away. Part of him wanted to be sad about that, but the bigger part of him, the part that was now connected to something vast and ancient, felt only determination. "Ship," Jake said out loud. "Show me our weapons." Knowledge flooded into Jake's mind. He suddenly understood technology that human scientists wouldn't discover for 1,000 years. Energy cannons that could crack planets, reality bombs that could erase entire fleets from existence, shields that could protect solar systems. "Incredible," Jake breathed. "And terrifying," Cale added. "Remember, Jake, with this power comes responsibility. The ship's creators destroyed themselves because they forgot that lesson." Jake nodded. He could feel the temptation already, the urge to use all this power for his own purposes, to remake the world the way he wanted it. But his human heart, the part that still remembered fixing broken cars and dreaming about asking Sarah on a date, kept him grounded. The ship broke through Earth's atmosphere and into space. Jake had never seen Earth from space before. It was beautiful, blue and white and perfect. Behind it, he could see the dark shapes of the Devourer fleet approaching. "They're bigger than I thought," Jake said. "And hungrier," Cale replied. "Jake, these ships have eaten entire civilizations. Billions of beings have died screaming as the Devourers consumed their life force. Do not show them mercy. They understand only death." Jake felt the ship's weapons lock onto the lead Devourer ship. At this distance, it looked like a moving shadow against the stars. But Jake's enhanced vision could see the details. The ship was alive like his own vessel. But where Jake's ship felt warm and protective, the Devourer ship felt cold and hungry. It radiated malice like heat from a fire. "This is for everyone who never got a chance to fight back," Jake whispered. Jake fired. A beam of pure energy shot across space. Not light, but something beyond light. Something that existed in dimensions humans had no names for. It struck the lead Devourer ship and tore through it like paper. The ship exploded in a burst of dark fire. Jake felt its death scream echo across space. But instead of satisfaction, he felt only sadness. Even monsters, he realized, could feel pain. The other 4 Devourer ships immediately changed course. They spread out, no longer approaching in a straight line. They had learned that Earth was defended. 4 left, Kyle said. 4 too many, Jake replied. The battle for Earth had begun, and Jake Miller, former junkyard owner, was humanity's only hope. He smiled. It felt good to finally fix something that really mattered.